to the very first episode of Launching Logistics, where we dive deep into the dynamics of leadership, management, technology, and of course, logistics. Whether you're a seasoned professional or just beginning your journey in these fields, this podcast is designed to bring you insightful conversations, expert opinions, and the latest trends that shape the industry. I'm Jim Becker, your host, and I couldn't be more excited to embark on this journey with you. As we kick off this podcast, I want to give you a glimpse into what you can expect from our upcoming episodes. Each week, we'll explore the intersection of leadership and technology, dissect management strategies that drive success, and delve into the logistics that keep the wheels of our industry actually turning. We'll be talking to industry leaders, innovative thinkers, and those on the front lines of change, all to provide you with actionable insights that can apply in your own professional life. One of the main topics we will be talking about is leadership, which is more than just a title. It's a mindset. It's a way of being. Throughout this podcast, we explore how effective leadership shapes organizations and drives innovation. We'll discuss the importance of vision, the nuances of decision making, and the role of empathy in guiding teams through both challenges and, of course, successes. Whether you're leading a small team or a multinational corporation, the principles of leadership we'll explore will be relevant and valuable. But leadership doesn't exist in a vacuum. It's intertwined with management, the practical day-to-day actions that turn a vision into reality. In our discussions on management, we'll cover topics like project management, best practices, strategic planning, and the art of balancing short-term demands with long-term goals. We'll also touch on the human side of management, including how to foster a positive work culture, manage conflict, and mentor the next generation of leaders. And of course, we cannot talk about these topics without delving into logistics, the backbone of global trade and commerce. This is where it all happens. In our episodes, we'll explore how supply chain management is evolving, how companies are navigating the complexities of global trade, and what the future actually holds for this critical industry. Whether it's the latest in freight technology, the challenges of last mile delivery, or the impact of geopolitical shifts on the supply chains, we'll be covering it all. Now, to set the tone for what's to come, I'm thrilled to introduce our very first guest, and that's Anne Reinke, President and CEO of the Transportation Intermediaries Association, also known as the TIA. Anne has been at the helm of the TIA since 2020, navigating the organization through one of the most tumultuous periods in recent history. From the surge in demand during the early days of the pandemic to the current challenges of fraud, a deflationary market space, and regulatory issues, Anne's leadership has been instrumental in guiding the logistics industry through these uncharted waters. In today's interview, Anne will share her insights on the current state of the logistics industry, the challenges the TIA members are actually facing, and the initiatives that the TIA is spearheading to combat issues like fraud. We'll also discuss the importance of advocacy in Washington, D.C., and how organizations like the TIA are working to ensure that the voices of logistics professionals are heard by policymakers. So without further ado, let's dive into my conversation with Anne Reinke. I'm sure you'll find her perspectives as enlightening and thought-provoking as I did. Thank you, everyone, for joining in today. This is a great opportunity. We have the one, the only Anne Reinke from the TIA, the Transportation Intermediaries Association. How are you doing, Anne?
I'm doing just fine. Thanks so much for having me on your show. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. And we've done this before in past, maybe 4 years ago when you first joined the TIA. And how's your journey been going so far?
It's hard not to evaluate my journey with the journey of the logistics industry because, as you recall, I got in not in the beginning of COVID, but pretty early on in the COVID process, and we had reached the point where we needed, now people were at home and they were buying things. And as you know, 2021, 2022, the the amount of freight that was going through our country and the amount of work that brokers were doing and the capacity crisis that we were all experiencing, right? It was like we'd never seen before. And if you look at any of the charts and graphs that we have, it is at the highest volume we've ever seen, the most amount of revenue we've ever had, all of that stuff. And then go down to 2023, where people started going back to their haircuts and they started going back on trips and they didn't want to buy as much stuff at home. And we saw capacity really evening out, right? We don't have a capacity crisis anymore. And so, we've lost 4,000 brokers since 2022. We've never had as many members as we had in 2021 and 2022. And now we're sort of it's amazing that we saw this business cycle in 4 years. It was kind of a business cycle on steroids. That being said, we're still at a higher level than we ever were. You look at the where we are now, and we're higher than we were in 2019, even in 2020. But that to me is sort of the journey, which has been like everything has been unbelievable, and now sort of everything's coming back down to reality. But I think it's still a pretty good reality, other than the kind of issues that we've seen, which I know we'll get into.
Absolutely. And everything goes in cycles also. And I've been in this industry since like 1991, and I've watched the ebbs and flows. And it's really just going along with everything, no matter what it is. It's really what you focus in on. Are we focusing in on the tragedy of it all? Are we focusing on the growth of it all? And it's a really great thing to inquire about. So the last time I saw you, I believe it was at a conference.
Yes. Were you the one you were at in Phoenix, right?
I sure was.
Yeah, that was a great one. I thought it was wonderful to see you. It's always wonderful to have time to actually catch up with members that we only talk to on the phone or on podcasts or what have you. I don't know what you thought, but everyone there was interested in fraud. I mean, the fraud sessions were jammed, unfortunately or fortunately, and what's going to happen to the freight market. I mean, those are the two top issues for us this year that we're hearing from everybody.
Yeah, I mean, fraud has happened a lot across the industry. It seems like it's like doubled, if not more, because all the claims that I'm hearing that's happening and the tactics that they're using, not only that, but also in the internet sabotage happening, where people are actually taking over people's servers and really crashing them and holding them in ransom. So, I know you have the carrier framework that TIA's been offering for many, many years. And now I believe you have a task force that's really focusing in on the fraud and the theft that's been really running rampant throughout the past year or so. So, what's causing this whole spike and what's a TIA doing for its members?
I think there's a lot of different kind of hypotheses as to why there's much more fraud. You know, we just talked about how the pandemic, we were seeing these revenues that we'd never seen before, and sort of freight volumes that we never had before. And I have to think that that attracted some interest in the professional criminal enterprise, because it may have been an industry, and you know this, Jim, because you've been in it for years. There's always some low level of fraud, there is in any industry, but because we attracted attention and the money was coming in so much, I think that attracted bad actors, unfortunately. The other thing that I think has made it worse is that we have very little enforcement. We have very little federal enforcement. We have very little state enforcement. I think there's finally now some activity from state bureaus of investigation. We do have some interest in, FMCSA recognizing at least that there is more enforcement to be had, even though they're not actually doing it. that makes it kind of the perfect crime in a way because it's just too easy. And the last thing I'd say this is that this 80% of our membership has a gross annual revenue of 15 million. So to think that they have the resources to spend money on technology solutions that prevent fraud or any kind of additional assistance, it's very, very challenging for them. They're not the big guys who can afford having teams of carrier vetting or having technology that sustains that. And all of those technology solutions are fabulous. But if you've just started business last year, you probably can't yet afford that. So our task force is really trying to provide education. We're providing a fraud framework for those folks who just don't even know where to begin. What are the red flags that they need to look for? We have a training course for them. And then, of course, we're doing other things like if we can get some data that tells us how big of a problem this is in our membership, this is something that we can lay on the table in the halls of Congress and in our regulators and say, you guys, we're underestimating how big of a problem this is. This is not just affecting a B2B expense at a couple $1,000s here and there. This is a hundreds and hundreds of $1 million problem. Something has to be done. So that's one of the other things that we're doing. And because Jim, you've been affiliated with TIA, you know how hard we have a volunteer membership sort of committee structure that works exceedingly hard on behalf of the membership. And we're very, very lucky to have really talented folks at the TIA fraud task force working on these issues.
That's awesome. Yeah, and I sat on the board for over 6 years and part of the policy forum and going to DC and really walking the halls of the Senate and the Congress, really just trying to get certain bills passed to really help all of our members throughout all those times. And that's something great that the TIA talks about and does. And we'll talk a little bit more about that in a little bit. But now there's a new deputy administration at the FMCSA, Vin White, I believe, and I'm assuming that the TIA is in huge conversations with him and what's going on there now. Can you just share a little bit about what's going on with that, with the task force?
Sure. So we sent the new deputy administrator a welcome letter, and we highlighted some of our key issues, including, of course, this fraud issue that we talked about. I will say this: he just went on paternity leave. God bless him. God bless
God
him. He's
bless him.
having a baby. He should be home with that baby as long as he can be. But to be TBD, we're gonna get back in there. But we do work close. Chris Burrows, who's our vice president of government affairs, does a fabulous job, and he has regular contact with all the folks at FMCSA, not just the higher ups, but the people who are the careers there who've been working at that agency for years. So we have a very good conversation. We invited the deputy administrator to our policy forum, which is in September in Washington, D.C. I don't know if he'll be able to come or not, but we just want to make sure that it is a conversation. They may not do things that we always like, as you know, but we have to maintain those lines of communication because how will they know anything if we don't come in to see them, right? Or if we refuse to talk to them? We have to make sure that we're there to educate them and let them know about what the critical issues that our members are facing.
And enforcement is such an important thing, what you mentioned, as well as, building up that relationship so that they can really support us. I mean, they're the government. They're there to help us and to regulate. And that's what really needs to happen. I mean, when we have something of over $1 billion of fraud that's actually happening, like that's detrimental for the whole industry overall. So it's great what you and the staff and also the board and committee members have been doing here moving forward. So I just want to acknowledge you for all of that and your whole team.
Thank you. I mean, and you know this too, Jim, that it's a little bit of a bet the company risk for some of these member companies. If
Yeah.
they have a fraud that happens to them and they can't afford it and they don't want to go back to their shipper and tell them we lost your freight or your freight's being held hostage or what have you. I mean, that can wreck the relationship they have with their shipper ultimately, and it can impoverish them if they have to end up paying twice. It's a really, really tenuous situation for some of our member companies. And so it's so critical that we get this right. And look, it's not just affecting brokers, it's affecting carriers. The fraud has been perpetrated against shippers. It's all of us. So, one of the things we talked about this morning at our staff meeting is we talk regularly to these other interest groups, the drivers and the shippers and the retailers. Can we come up with some sort of fraud summit where we actually make some kind of life changing or policy changing decisions? One of the things we have is a piece of legislation that would try to hold the FMCSA accountable to really enforce the laws they already are supposed to enforce, which they just haven't because of whatever time or money or technological constraints. That's something we can all get behind. But what else is it that we can all get behind?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and going into the policy forum, that's coming up, isn't it? What are the dates on the policy forum?
Yeah, September 16th through the 18th. So fraud is going to be an issue. The independent contractor issue, and you may have thoughts and feelings about that, but typically we want to preserve the ability for a driver to be an independent contractor if he or she would like to be. And then the last issue is this issue. It's called broker transparency, where there's some who would love to see the contracts we have with shippers, which we believe are private contracts to which they are not a party and they do not have a right to see. So those are going to be our top three issues. And what happens is it's sort of fun. You go up on the hill, you're with your state. So you would be with your Illinois brethren. You go visit the Illinois members and you kind of come up with a little patter amongst your folks about who's going to talk about what. And you're meeting with, in most cases, it's with the staff, but in some cases, it's with the actual member. And so you have kind of a wrapped audience there for, call it 15 minutes, maybe more. And you have an opportunity to speak directly to people who can actually do something. And so it's something that some people don't want to do every day, and that's why you have Chris Burrows. But it is an awesome experience if you want to do it, just to have your say. Speak truth to power, as they say.
The policy forum is something just unique. It really opened up my eyes being there on the Hill to really see how a bill is actually talked about, how bills are passed, and getting hand to hand with our senators and Congress people to really see what's going on in their mind. What do they already know? What are they not aware of? And actually getting together. I mean, TIA does a smash up job really getting everyone together for a great dinner, cocktail hour to really hear from them and for them to hear from us also of what's really happening within our states. So if you haven't been, reach out to the TIA. I mean, it's amazing what they do. And I'm glad that you have it in September now and not in the middle of July, which is great, or June. I remember some hot days in DC.
Yeah. Well, as I said, it's like 101 or 102 today. So yeah, we're glad it's not going on either.
So I'd like to go back to the carrier selection framework. That's something that I remember the TIA working on many years ago, maybe 10 years ago when it first started. And the industry fraud report, right? That's something new, putting advisories and committees into place. What kind of results have you been seeing, and what's next with all of that?
So the carrier framework, as you mentioned, we've had for years, and it's not intended to be a legal document. It's not intended to be, you have to do this and so on and so forth. But it's just some kind of life lessons that our members have learned about what to look for when you're selecting a carrier. That has become so pivotal and important, as you know, as we talk about fraud, that it's almost blended into this fraud framework too, because the carrier selection is such a critical component of preventing fraud, right? But there's also the safety element to it as well. And you may know this, that the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration is charged with doing a safety audit of all the carriers in the United States, of which there are 500,000, independent truck carriers out there. And they only end up doing safety audits of 8% of them. So 92% of them are not audited for safety at all. They're unrated. And so that's a problem. So that's why we came up with this carrier framework, because, what do people look for if they know that there's no rating for them to find if they look on the federal government's, registration list? If they can't find anything, that's a problem, right? So it's something that helps them to determine what what they should select, who they should choose, and also just kind of the best practices in the advent of both fraud and just thinking about safety. The more you can have an understanding of who you're dealing with, of who you're working with, and maybe picking up the phone and talking to the carriers that are in your database, I think the better off for all of us, and for certainly for your business, that you have some trust and assurance that you are dealing with someone who says who is who they say they are, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm not one to look into a magic crystal ball or anything, but it'd be great to have it like tokenized where, with cryptocurrency, if you will, something that cannot be like manipulated, where, a certain company that has a DOT number or an MC number, it says who they are, and here no one can get in there and change any of the information. Like, I see some type of world like that actually happening in the future, in the near future, actually.
I've met with a lot of people who are working on vetting solutions and technology solutions and all of these various things. And I agree with you. I think that that world is out there sooner than we think, because there are a lot of smart people putting their energies and attentions to this to try to solve this problem, and not just make money, but actually try to solve the problem, you
I
know?
mean, when you have a private ledger like that, that someone could actually say, well, here's the TIA, they're on this ledger. Okay, here's this carrier, here's this broker, here's this shipper. They're all on the ledger. I mean, we all use these MC numbers or any type of number that, even on a scat code, we all utilize these. There should be an easy way of actually making that happen as we move forward, just to keep the integrity of everything just running smoothly so that we don't have to deal with these things that go bump in the night. Transportation's already tough enough as it is.
You hear the terrible things like people are buying MC numbers on Facebook Marketplace, and there's some PO boxes in Cheyenne where there are 200 MC numbers registered to it, and things like that. Finding these technological solutions is a way to get rid of the sort of scourge of fraud, I think. I mean, it's not going to solve everything, but it certainly can be helpful.
Unfortunately, there are bad actors out there, and something that I learned recently is hurt people. And it's pretty sad because it's just an endless cycle that just would be better if it just stopped. One thing I want to point out is, having you as the head of the TIA is a real benefit for a lot of us that are members of the TIA. You have what, 16 years of experience at CSX as the vice president of government affairs. I mean, you did 2 years at the U.S. Department of Transportation. I mean, and the TIA's been around for what now, 46 years?
Exactly right. It's 46 years. This is all very nice of you to say, Jim. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. I mean, I consider all of you, the staff and the TIA, like family. And what you all are doing, it's just amazing. You're kind of like that shield for us that's fighting those fights that we don't even know about in some cases. Some of us do know, but you're really fighting the fight for the small people as well as the large people. I mean, you did that on the Hill when you were at CSX as well, and you're doing it now for how many members do you have now?
We have a little over 1,800.
And with, 4,000 brokers going out of business in 2023, to hold a membership like that of 1,800, that's remarkable.
The staff we have is devoted to our members. They really are, and that sounds so cheesy and like it's not true, but it is. They really they are motivated to do whatever is the best for our membership. And a lot of them have been around for years. You know them, Jim. They've been around for years. And some of the issues that we've been dealing with and that you're aware of are very thorny, which is if we are going to hold ourselves out as the most professional organization representing the 3PL, that means we have to make sure that our members abide by our ethical requirements. And so we set up these enhanced new member requirements to make sure that we're getting members who have some education, have some experience. And if they don't have education and experience, then they can take TIA classes to get a certification for becoming, a new broker. I mean, we want to help people succeed, but we also want to help them succeed the right way. And so if we're going to point out and shame the fraud that's going on, we don't want to be part of that problem. So we want to make sure we hold ourselves accountable in that respect.
Especially if you're a new broker that's starting out. You know, when I first started out as a broker, I didn't really go to the TIA, unfortunately. I really struggled and pounded my head against the wall. It's like, it's got to be me. I've got to do it. Where when you do go to the TIA early, you're really there giving them so much guidance, so much support. When someone calls up and says, "Hey, I'm having this problem with my business," you actually are almost like a matchmaker, setting them up with another member that could really help guide and support and yoke them through that whole process.
This industry really, by and large, there's not a whiff of arrogance about them. There is not any interest in withholding information from one another by and large. They, if you go to any kind of TIA meeting, or if you're on TIA Connect, for example, you're going to find people who will help you as opposed to say, figure it out yourself. I did. They don't want to do that. They actually want to help you. So they'll say, here's what I recommend when I was setting up my business. Here are the vendors that I used, and here's what the issues are that we're facing and how we thought about it. Even our fraud task force, we have a session at the end on our agenda. It's information sharing, basically like, this is the kind of hit that we got last week, and here's how we handled it. And it's really just to try to tell people this is sort of what to watch out for. This is a very generous membership, as you know.
Absolutely. I mean, the love is unbelievable. And I hate to bring up love, but the love is there. I mean, you can just see it, you can feel it. I mean, there's so many people that have helped me out along my journey, and it's been remarkable and astonishing, a matter of fact. So, one of the stories that I have is I called up Jim Siphon down in Georgia and said, "Hey, I've got some questions." And he really helped me out tremendously. And it was amazing how much of a guidance and a beacon he was for me, as well as so many other people. Transdynamics, Jerry, company, also in Georgia. I had some questions early on, and he was this larger company that had offices in Chicago and Oregon and also in Georgia. And I said, "Jerry, what do I do in these situations? I want to open up another office." And he guided me, and then we got up to 11 offices. It's really running into maybe even how compensation's done or non-competes are done. What's the best commission plan to be on? Or it was pretty interesting because I was always like trying to say, well, what's that one and what's that one, let me just copy those. And a lot of the leaders in the organizations really just took me aside and said, "Listen, it's not the other compensations. It's what is right for you and your employees and your clients, the customers that you're shipping for. What's really going to be beneficial for you?" And the moment that that light bulb went off in my head, I started creating our own compensation programs, and it really made a difference. And I realized it's not copying somebody else, it's standing out as yourself in and really moving forward. And that's where, the TIA really has helped with that, because you all are like giving the framework. You talk about the carrier framework. It's not a document that you shall follow. No, it's a framework that could be used within your organization. And we've taken some of that and utilized it, and we've adopted some of our own. And the committees that I've sat on and still sit on to this day for the TIA, it really is my way of giving back to the community in which that has served me over the years. And that's one way that I really believe that people should get involved in associations. And if it's a working board, a non-working board, really get involved, because now you can really see how things are done, like the policy forum, and really seeing how a bill is moved. And it's interesting to watch that, and how hard it can be, and how easy it can be with just communication and humanity.
Yeah, I agree with you. And one of the things too is, we are a member driven organization, so that means we're not making up education. For example, we're not making up classes that we think are interesting. We're making we're bringing classes to you because it's stuff that you all have told us that you're interested in. I mean, that's, I think, the most important part of our organization, that it's driven by the members. And so if we're on Capitol Hill and we're talking about a member priority, It's because you've told us that this is what's important to you. I don't know. I'm going to speak for TIA only because I can't tell you about the other associations, but I think that that's a difference maker, so that we are driven to provide what it is that you need. Now, on politics, that's a different thing. We can't control that. But I will say this: if you are not up there, they can't possibly hear from us, and they'll hear from organizations that may not have our interests at heart. I've always said I'm a little bit of a holy roller as it relates to lobbying. It is a constitutionally protected right, and it means you have the ability to say what it is that is important to you. That doesn't determine an outcome. There's no necessarily an impetus for a member of Congress to do what you say. But if they don't know what you think, how could they possibly act in an informed manner? Or if they're only hearing from the other side of whatever the issue is, that's a problem too. So you're doing yourself and your company a disservice if you're not up there, at least telling them what it is that you're working on. They may have no idea. And how could they? They're working, there's 535 members of Congress. They have so many issues going on at one time. We know what's going on in this sort of larger political sphere right now, and that's very, very, very distracting. And so why would they have time to think about the logistics business or the 3PL? They just wouldn't. So we have to kind of take a corner of their time and make sure that we educate them. A lot of these staffers, they may be young, but they stay a very long time, and they end up becoming very, very influential or very, very important. And, most people in Washington don't leave, they just switch jobs. So it's always important to maintain these kind of good relationships, I think.
I mean, some of the relationships that I built with Tammy Duckworth, as a matter of fact, local representative here in Illinois, through the TIA, that relationship happened through you guys brokering that whole situation. If it was out in DC or if it was here local with something that y'all just set up, it was great really getting into a small room where there's only 12 of us to really have a voice and to have that voice be heard and to show that we're just like you. We're business owners. This is what we need. You're the one in charge of really pushing these bills forward and really being that voice for us, a collective, if you will, where it's one voice.
Yeah, you're making them care. You're making them understand, and you're making them care. And I think that's what it's
Yeah, and
incumbent
it's
on us to
great.
do.
You're the only association that I've ever been part of that actually has a pact that really brings dollars together to really cause a movement. And you guys have done such a great job with that pact to really make our voices be heard.
Yeah, that's another tool in the toolkit. And again, they're never assured an outcome of any kind. Some people don't like the fact that there's money in politics, but it's also a constitutionally protected right as provided for by the Supreme Court. And it doesn't guarantee an outcome, but it guarantees an audience. And again, you've got to have an audience with these folks. And if they're hard to reach, or if you really want to have a one-on-one conversation, that's an opportunity to do it. And so I feel blessed that we have those resources because it provides you another lane, if you will, to make your case.
Well, awesome. Is there any final words that you'd like to share with our audience in regards to the TIA?
Well, if you ever have questions for me, I'm at Reinke at tianet.org. Our policy forum you can find at tianet.org under meetings. It's September 14th through the 16th. And then we have a Technovations conference, which will be October 15th through the 17th at the TPC Sawgrass Resort in Ponte Vedra Beach.
Well, Anne, it's always a pleasure. And thank you so much for joining us today. And really do appreciate all that you do and all that your staff does. Please send my love on over to them. We really appreciate it.
I will. Thank you so much for everything you do for us, Jim.
And that wraps up our first episode of Launching Logistics. I hope you enjoyed my conversation with Anne Reinke from the Transportation Intermediaries Association and insights into the logistics industry, particularly around the challenges of fraud and the importance of advocacy. Were both enlightening and inspiring. It's clear that under her leadership, TIA is not just navigating the complexities of today's logistics landscape, but also shaping the future of the industry. As we discussed, the logistics sector is facing unprecedented challenges, from the rapid advancements in technology to the ever-evolving regulatory environment. Yet, despite these hurdles, there's also tremendous opportunity. Whether it's through innovative technology solutions, better regulatory frameworks, or simply stronger collaboration across the industry, there's a path forward that can lead to greater efficiencies, security, and growth for all involved. If there's one key takeaway from today's episode, it's that staying informed and engaged is crucial. The issues we face today are complex and multifaceted, but coming together, sharing knowledge, and advocating for what's right, we can make a real impact. Whether you're a small business owner or a part of a large organization, your voice actually matters. Don't hesitate to get involved, whether it's through industry associations like TIA, local network events, or simply by staying up to date on the latest industry news. As we move forward with this podcast, I'm excited to bring you more conversations like the one we just had today. In the future episodes, we'll continue to explore the intersections of leadership, management, technology, and logistics, bringing you the latest trends and insights from industry leaders and experts. I also want to hear from you, our listeners. What topics are you most interested in? Are there specific challenges that you're facing in your business right now that you'd like to really have us cover? Or maybe there's an industry leader you'd like to hear from on this podcast. See, your feedback is invaluable as we shape the direction of this show. So please don't hesitate to reach out, DM me. You can connect with us or me on jimbecker.com, or follow us on pretty much every social media platform at Jim Becker JFB, my initials. And if you've enjoyed today's episode, please consider subscribing, leaving a review, and sharing it with your network. Your support helps us reach more people and continue to bring you quality content that informs and inspires. Thank you again for tuning in to this inaugural episode. I'm truly excited about the journey we're embarking on together. And I look forward to conversations we'll have in weeks to come, not to mention months. Until next time, stay curious, stay engaged, and keep pushing the boundaries of what's possible in your business, in your industry, and in your life. Take care, and I'll see you next time on the next episode.